Hey little hoes, my name is Kristen and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is one I am so excited to do. One, because I have been formulating it in my head for quite some time and just haven't had the time to execute it. And two, I'm super passionate about this product and how successful I've been using it. And that is sphagnum moss. Sphagnum moss comes from bogs and the like and comes in different forms. A lot of times it will be peat moss that you see in a lot of potting soils, additives to those growing medias to add some light and airiness to the mixture. You can also find finely milled sphagnum, which is used to help prevent dampening off or damping off in seed growing, which is essentially just like a pathogen that arises from really cool and damp conditions and will kill your seedlings. You add it as a top layer essentially on top of those sown seeds to help prevent that. Today I am specifically focusing on the sphagnum moss a lot of orchid growers will use. You probably see it quite a bit in like those orchids that you can buy at the grocery store or whatnot, either mixed in or just on its own. I have been using this since probably late last year and especially the beginning of this year. I've been using this in place of soil for a lot of stressed out plants, especially those that I have recently imported. So when you get plants in the mail, oftentimes they're stressed out and struggling, acclimating from a very humid environment to one that's potentially less so. And if they've come a long way, you can get a lot of root rot. And I experienced that a few times along my import journey this year. So I decided I didn't have anything to lose. Why don't I throw some of these guys into damp sphagnum and see if it improves? Well, the cool thing about sphagnum is that it's very acidic by nature and it has natural antifungal and antibacterial properties, which is especially great considering if you're growing plants somewhat long-term in sphagnum, you want something that's not going to harbor any pathogens and allow for enough aeration for those roots to develop and recover. My first plant is this Philodendron Elegance that I got from Equigenera this spring, and it, I believe, was kind of toasted from the packaging that they used. It just sort of steamed it and there wasn't much root system left to behold. So I plopped it in this glass pitcher with that damp spag and have been growing it ever since in it, and holy moly, it's taken off. These two leaves were existing, but all this new growth occurred pretty much over the summer and fall months, and you see I even have a little bit of, you can't really see it and I don't want to snap it, but there's more growth coming on up at the top. I do have a funky leaf there, please excuse it. I think it was either from having to spray for thrip a few weeks ago or it was pressed up against a cold window and that kind of zapped it, but it honestly improved tenfold from what it was. And I will say, I think I like using either clear or light colored glass or plastic for this, just to help get in more sunlight to the root system. As far as how saturated I keep the moss, I try not to overdo it, because it's just going to sit there and potentially cause some rot. So I keep it lightly damp, and sometimes depending on what type of container you use, it will really not dry out too fast, or the top layer will dry out relatively quick in comparison to the bottom. such as with this amazing Philodendron bipennifolium Hammerhead Gold, which if you guys follow me on Instagram, you'll notice I posted a picture of this guy. That new leaf is pretty gold, and look at the root system on it. Like, all of that is just pure roots. This guy is pretty dry up at the top, but down below you can see a bunch of condensation still and moisture droplets occurring, so I think it's pretty good still. If I were to water it at this point, I'd do it very shallowly just to re-dampen that top layer. When in doubt, keep it on the dry side would be my advice. Another guy that I am still growing in sphagnum, and unfortunately it's kind of a greenish color so you can't see the roots very well, but this is my Philodendron Lime Fiddle from New Life Tropicals. And it's doing incredibly well, and looky there, it's got a new leaf forming. So I say probably don't go much darker than this, even though I've heard differing opinions about propagating in dark versus lighter containers. I personally like the light because you can also see the development, and if there's potentially anything going wrong, you can easily swap out or assist the roots in any way. This guy is kind of a miraculous comeback story. This is the Epipremnum ponatum skeleton key, also from New Life, and it was by far the worst condition when I got it. It was a straggly little string of a plant and didn't have much root system. And right now, it is incredibly difficult to see, but there is a bunch of little rooty tooty, fresh and fruity bits there, and pretty much all of this is new growth. I also think that aroids particularly like this because not only does it add a lot of aeration to the roots, which is important, but it creates a sort of humid environment around the plant to really stimulate its growth. This is an amazing Mexicanum that I got from Suzette. It's putting out some new growth, and I got this and a Pastizanum or McDowell's hanging out in this sphagnum just to help develop the root system a little bit more before I plop them in soil. The McDowell's is way too floppy at the moment to bring in here and risk snapping, so I just wanted to show you this Mexicanum. I'm gonna oh god, I'm gonna make such a mess. Look at how great this root system is, and how much it's developed is quite impressive. This is slightly damper than I like, but I don't have it really near any grow lights. Keep that in mind. If you have your plants in a little bit shadier condition, you're probably going to have to water an awful lot less than if it's in more direct sunlight or under a grow light. Now this is my Blinding Light Syngonium. You can see this is the really beautiful variegated leaf, and I got a bunch, whoo, almost knocked that over. I got a bunch of growth on this recently, and I was, side story, a little bit nervous because there was a ton of green happening, but this newest leaf has a little bit of variegation in it, and I'm hopeful that that will continue. Otherwise, I might have to cut this down here and start over with maybe some more impressive variegation from this one stalk here. But this as well, maybe you see this, maybe you don't, has really filled up this container. All of this is filled with roots and is pretty much ready to pot up in soil, I think. I have heard a couple people growing in sphagnum, but oftentimes it's not long term. There was another YouTuber that I think only has one video out, but he's grown most of his aroids in sphagnum long term and it's been successful. In my opinion, yes, it can be successful, but it's kind of a pain to get the nutrients to the plants. And you can use like some liquid fertilizers, but I don't know that long term it's going to be enough. I am going to probably pot up a lot of these upcoming. I'm debating if I want to wait until spring to do it when things are a little bit more vigorous and growing because of the warm conditions, or if I want to just do it now. So still debating on that. And now my last two that really just impress me the most right now. This is my amazing Florida Ghost. So pretty much this entire main stalk there with these two, possibly third coming on leaves are recent, probably within the last 2 months or so. It is loving life inside this sphagnum, and I have it in a glass pot on top of a little saucer, and this is fairly damp still if you feel down into the core. It looks a lot drier from the outside, and probably is just because I have it under grow lights, but look at that red root down there, and that's probably just, you know, extra pigmented because it's bright where I have it. This is just gone crazy in sphagnum, and it wasn't bad to begin with as far as the root system was concerned, but I just decided to put all of them in that sphagnum to help them recover and be less stressed out after their trip from Thailand. Now for my number one success story using sphagnum, and that is going to be my Biliary or Biliary. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. It's another one that I got from New Life this spring, and it looked good when it arrived, but as I've said before, you don't always notice the problems or the stress until a few days or weeks later. And soon after I potted it, it started to rot. And I'll see if I can insert some pictures. I showed you guys on Instagram how it was starting to decline rapidly. Try and insert some pictures, but it was down to pretty much 1 or 2 little nubs of root, as well as the main stalk. So I stuck it in sphagnum, but I used one of those aquatic pots. This is something that they'll grow a lot of, like plants for fish tanks or pond plants in, and I think a lot of people will substitute orchid pots for these as well. This is what it looks like today. Part of the reason it is so big and lush right now is because it is in my terrarium, and I'm sure the extra humidity has helped it quite a bit as well. But look, and it's even started to grow its roots into the soil substrate below, and right now it has a brand new dripping wet leaf about to emerge. Potentially another side shoot here as well. But this has got to be my number one success. I am so impressed, and definitely recommend if anybody is struggling with a plant, potentially it just needs finer soil, more aeration, and perlite or pumice isn't cutting it, try their sphagnum. And definitely have some on hand if you're kind of a new to importing plants and are starting to dabble with that. It's not a bad thing to have on hand. And let me tell you, I am just blown away by how great all the plants are using it for recovery purposes. And again, I don't know if I'm gonna keep growing these guys in here long term. I do want to eventually switch out to soil, I think, just because it provides more nutrients and is easier when it comes to fertilizing. But yeah, this is my success story and I want to share with you guys. So if any of you have used sphagnum and like it or have a novel way of using it, please let me know below. I would love to hear about it. That is going to be it for today. As always, stay safe, healthy, and sane, and I will talk to you soon. Goodbye.
That's the power of SPHAGNUM, baby.